Welcome, everybody, to today's webinar in our series of webinars that we happen to have basically every other Wednesday in the morning in the U.S., in the afternoon in the EMEA time zones, and a little bit after business hours in the rest of the world. Welcome. If you're joining us anywhere in the world today, we've got a nice program. We've got one of our Run SAP partners on board today to speak a little bit about some experience they've had implementing ChaRM, Change Request Management, at one of their customers. So we invite you to listen in on this and hear the feedback from Subhash in just a minute. Subhash has given me the chance to have a couple of minutes of your time here in the beginning just to mention a few things about the Run SAP Partner Program. As most of you know out there, and if you don't know, I urge you to quickly become knowledgeable of the fact around the new program that's being offered in 2013 from the partner management side. It's the new Run SAP Partner Program, which will be officially rolled out by April the 1st. We are sunsetting, in other words, terminating the Run SAP Implementation Certification this year. Some of you guys on the line, your companies will be certified until March or June or the end of this year. We will invite you to join into the Run SAP Partner Program at a certain point this year. One important point from my side, and I want to make a couple of points actually clear at this time, that once you enter the Run SAP Partner Program, you will no longer be in the Run SAP Implementation Certification. So it's either one or the other, and I want to make sure that that's clear for everybody. So you will get a termination notice for the implementation certification, and then also a chance to sign a new addendum. The addendum is referring to your services agreement. A new addendum to be in the Run SAP Partner Program. So it's either one or the other. There will be some more information coming out from our side around that very shortly. In the meantime, if you are not so clued in on what I'm talking about, I urge you to reach out to your partner manager today and for him or her to spend some time with you and tell you about the great things we have coming in the Run SAP Partner Program. The SAP Solution Manager as a managed service, for example, the events, the trainings, the programs that we have there should be a nice transition piece from implementation certification into what will be our foundational program for Run SAP. And I say it's foundation because it will be the enabler to the new certifications that sit on top. And new certification will be the Innovation Partner Certification coming on later this year, and there will be more information about that too. And the Transformed Operations Certification that will sit also on top of the program. So that's not the topic today, though, but I did want to throw those points out. The topic today is from my good friend at DataCore Systems, Subhash Jetley. Subhash is the general manager for their SAP practice at DataCore. DataCore's been Run SAP Implementation certified now since 2009. They are located in the Philadelphia region in North America. And Subhash would like to share with us their implementation of ChaRM on one of their, I guess, larger, I would say, customers, and what challenges and benefits that they've seen in that complex landscape in the implementation that they did. So now I'll turn it over to Subhash. Subhash, welcome, and thanks for being our presenter for today.
Thanks, Andrew. Hello, everybody. Good morning. This is Subhash Jetley from DataCore Systems. If you cannot hear me, if you have any technical difficulties, please send me, in the write-up in the instant messenger so that I know it. Okay, I'm going to present, implementation of ChaRM that we did from DataCore at Johnson Controls on their Solution Manager 7.0 in the later version. This is right before 7.1 was released. And so I'm presenting that. We presented at Sapphire also last year. So here we go. They implemented Solution Manager, right in the beginning, starting with ChaRM. And besides that, they build some solutions and, build the business process inventory, which means set up the business scenarios, process steps, and moved bulk of their documentation from wherever they used to store into the Solution Manager. which included the blueprint documentation and the test documentation. Of course, we worked on ChaRM, implementing ChaRM. So they're no longer, some of the benefits that Johnson Controls feel that that solution managers benefited them is they have the solution documentation and testing documentation available in one central location, and they don't need to look up for information in different repositories anymore. And they have advantages of cross-system object lock, which is a big feature in Solution Manager 7.0 ChaRM, which did not exist in their existing, this change management tool that they had. This is a pretty prominent tool, but this, functionality did not exist there. And in addition to that, the retrofit, which is built into ChaRM, was not available to them. They had to do it manually, so they've shifted to using retrofit through ChaRM, which included approval procedures and workflow integration. On this slide, I'm showing briefly the technology stack that they had. Besides the ECC 6.0, the latest support pack, EHP's support pack, and they had like 6,000 named users spread across the globe in many countries, I'll show shortly. Some of the applications they were using was, besides ECC, was the BI 7.0, SRM, XI, the same as PI, BPC, business consolidations, and RPM, and of course Solution Manager 7.0. The database was on Oracle, and on 10.1 they're upgrading to 10.2 and 11G, and the operating system prominently used was HP Unix and Linux. This slide is showing some of the countries where they had users and, of course, developers, including developers, who are benefiting from the use of Solution Manager. And some of their systems included financial and purchasing systems. And financial prominently was in ECC. They are like a $40 billion company, so they are very prominent, and they are on the, they have a symbol on the stock market. And they're supported by SAP Common Template. And showing like 170 sites, 25 countries, 14 languages, users, and they're making 1 million plus parts and serving 9,000 of their customers worldwide. Okay. This slide is showing a STMS view of their support landscape. They have dev, they have on the left you see that dev is the development environment. Through a transport group they have the QA system and the production system. And this landscape existed before they implemented ChaRM, and this was with the use of STMS and workflow, whatever was done through spreadsheets, recording of transports all in spreadsheets, and no particular workflow in place. So just STMS and spreadsheets was what they had, and of course communicating through emails, which was scattered here and there, and so the information was never central. So the challenges that we faced when we started working on ChaRM was Solution Manager could not be implemented for both project and support landscape at the same time because they had the project going, but the support landscape was being managed by the third party, the other tool which was used for moving transport. And so we started using ChaRM only in the project environment. System availability was not there for both the project landscape and the support landscape. So, and even for the project landscape, they had to have they had a multi-terabyte database which had to be copied and moved from the production to QA. So they're having a lot of issues. So in parallel with ChaRM, they were implementing TDMS so that they don't have to resort to this. And TDMS facilitates copying a slice of the database, just the customizing objects and not the entire database. So that was another implementation they were doing. Then a system was not being made available to us for ChaRM implementation all at the same time. They were made available in installments, and I'll get into that further. Okay, and then JCI uses implementation projects for new deployment. They had a project called Saturn, which was the new implementation, and Genesis they named as the old support project. Okay. In addition, in ChaRM, we did facilitate automatic cutover from project to support landscape, which did not exist, and that was one of the challenges, how to implement it, because that was one of the most important needs of the project. Here's the timeline of the project moving from January to December. If you notice in the upper one-third window, we're showing the Saturn, which is the project landscape, which started in March. Then in August, they had to merge the support landscape, and the whole thing had to be completed before December. And in December, we added the BW systems. In the initial stages, for ChaRM implementation, here I'm showing DV1 was the development system available. That was the only system available, and that is in the project landscape. All corrections and transports regarding the project were created in DV1, and they had incorrectly used the destination IBase, one of the clients of the development system. Because the production system was not linked to this, they could not have even used the production, even if it was available, because it was not linked. So they just used one of the clients, 119, as the IBase production system. So at a later stage, in the second stage, we connected the QA landscape. Here's the TDM, QA1, CT1. All these are the QA systems. And the virtual systems here you see, which are DEZ, QAZ, FAZ at the same level, and PRZ. These are actually the support landscape. So added to the project landscape to emulate automatic cutover. So we had to make use of virtual systems because the support landscape initially could not be connected to the project landscape. It is just not available. Okay. Now the most important thing to do is whatever plans you're making for productive systems, you have to have proof of concept made available to the customer to ensure that not only do they get ultimately trained on the sandbox systems, they also can satisfy themselves that whatever they're trying to do will work in production environment. So we made use of the development solution manager and one ECC system, sandbox system called PSS, and the various clients like 400, 500, 300, 400, 500 emulated as the dev QA production systems, and PS1, PS2, PS3 here shown emulated as the support landscape. So POC was performed in development solution manager to emulate N and N+1 landscape cutover principle. That essentially was the requirement. And later on, once we went live, we had to train en masse all the developers and testers. So this environment we built as we went along helped a long way, in training them further to jump into production, start using the systems. So initially we used the virtual system in the sandbox, and then later on the virtual system replaced the support landscape. Virtual system was replaced by live client. So this is the final, full setup of SDMS in the development solution manager and the sandbox, PSS ECC system. So one of the issues that we noticed generally in solution manager is still existing. You can get more information on this through blogs in SDN. But the number of system roles are limited to 10. When you go into SMSY transaction and you create a logical component, and then horizontally, if you'll see, there are up to 10 roles you can have. 7 are reserved by SAP, which are predefined, and 10 user-defined roles are allowed. So 17 in total. Now, supposing a customer is using more than 17 clients and systems, then to overcome that limit, you can have multiple logical components created, so you can have, several more quality systems. So you can overcome that limit, which is something, we actually had to discover by ourselves. So you can have multiple logical components maintained vertically, and there's a provision. So thus you can have unlimited number of systems and clients available as system roles. So here, I'm showing, we're going from GMD to the Development Solution Manager. This STMS picture is showing you GMP, which is Production Solution Manager, and DV1 is the live development system of the productive environment, which we started with, and then we had those QA systems were shown, and here is where we see the DEZ, QAZFZ, and PRD. These are the support landscape virtual systems. Okay. Development system was the only one available at the beginning of ChaRM. That's why we had to do it. And 200 plus normal corrections were created in DV1 initially with the incorrect destination IBase. And when QA and production virtual system became available, project cycles of, the best practice of SAP is to make sure that you don't lose any of the normal corrections, urgent corrections. You should close the task list and make any changes to the logical component STMS only when the task list is closed, and then you recreate the task list. And that's what we had done. That is the best practice. When ChaRM is implemented and active, you should not be making changes to STMS or logical components. Otherwise, you are likely to lose your normal urgent corrections. Here I'm showing a view of the SMSY transaction in the productive systems. How we go around, horizontally you see the system roles. Addition of virtual production system. One of the requirements of CSOL is that productive system has to be defined. Even if it's a virtual productive system, unless you have that defined, your CSOL will not work. And that is not clearly defined in the CSOL documentation. You can see the CSOL configuration documentation in the IMG. If you run transaction SPRO on Solution Manager and walk through the ChaRM configuration, there's an area where you see CSOL documentation, but this fact is not documented, that the production box, which is production role, has to be defined. Otherwise, CSOL will not work. So we had to update the logs of the production system in the table which contain the corrections information for CSOL to work. So that's a word of caution for everybody. Okay, since there was the incorrect non-production IBase used in the creation of the normal urgent correction, normal corrections, we had to resort to another workaround. Here is mentioning the incorrect client was used. We had to update the CSOL table, and besides that, we had to, do transport of copies would not, get created. If you run through a normal correction the normal way, then the transport of copies would not get created. So we had to perform this additional action called complete action. Complete development could not be used to create transport of copies. So instead of that, we had to do a test transport. Go in the action button and perform the task of test transport. Test transport created the transport of copies, and then you could perform your testing and later on perform the task complete development. Okay. So you see this 119 here, that's where you describe the IBase, and DV1 is the IBase. Okay, here I'm showing the final picture of STMS with the N and N+1 landscape and the cutover. If you notice in the earlier picture I showed you, on the left we have the DV1 and then the QA1, CT1, this system, which is the QA system. But on the right side we had the the mock systems, actually the virtual systems, and those are replaced here. Again, this was performed after closing the task list and then making changes to the logical component as well as the STMS. So those dev or those mock systems, which is virtual systems, are replaced by live productive system. Dev is here, and then you have the QAS and FQA in the same level, and the PRD is the production level. So again, the task list had to be closed and regenerated. Once you close it, then you make changes to the STMS logical components. And once you're satisfied, then you recreate the task list. And another set of tasks you must take caution about is when you close the task list, make note of all the messages that come up on the screen, what all transports are involved, what all normal corrections are involved, which are being closed, because you have to verify once you recreate a task list that all those normal corrections along with their transports are getting regenerated into the new task list. And then that works perfect if you close the task list properly. One issue we ran into in this verification process is that 40% of the requests transfer requests became local, which is like a bug or something at that stage of ChaRM, with the support pack we were using, so it to manually plug in the target group for those transports. And of course, here's the word of caution mentioned at the bottom that you have to ensure that all open corrections are brought in new task list and transports are not local. This slide is showing you task lists with 12 systems. If it's a busy slide, but it's a snapshot of what the task list looks like. At the very top, you'll see the development system, and then you see the target system. There are about 10 of them. And then at the very end, you see the production system. You can get this view of the task list from within ChaRM. So the total one development system, 10 target systems, which are the QA systems, and then one production system. And all these 12 systems should be part of the logical component. The beauty is that with ChaRM, you can add some additional systems in STMS, but all the systems that are in logical components should exist in STMS. So ChaRM does allow you to, use, transport to some additional systems besides just what are available in the task list. This is a snapshot of CSOL, Cross System Object Lock. If you run transactions /tmw flow /cmsconf, called cmsconf, in that transaction, you should be able to see, which particular projects are having the project assignment mandatory. It's very important that your productive environment or even your dev environment, whichever system you're running ChaRM, you should make project assignment mandatory so that developers are not allowed to create transports on their own. Developers are supposed to only release tasks and only, you should release transport through ChaRM. Otherwise, you lose the benefit of ChaRM itself. So you have the system change option button and you have the critical object. So here it is important to make sure that the project spend is made mandatory. Okay, here's another workaround we had to resort to because IBase was incorrectly used as a non-productive system. Then for the action had to be reversed here. Action confirm successful test for normal correction will not behave normally since the IBase is non-production. To perform this confirm successful test, we had to use the action next to it. Release transport request was used, which was followed by a confirm successful test. Of course, we did not have to do any, customizing to make that happen. This release transport request does exist normally itself. So we did not have to do any customizing to make that happen. Okay, here's another view and some ideas presented. There was if you notice at the end, we have that productive systems. In addition to a target group was set up for GIT plant systems to allow multiple production systems where the transports can automatically reside. When you move to production, the main production system, the transports were made available in the buffers of the other production systems. These plant systems are replicated from the original main production system. This is something that Johnson Controls had been using in the past for various reasons, for the internal functionalities or transport information being made available to all the different plants in all the countries. So they wanted to have views of various production systems at least. So here is a view, and we have reached a stage where all corrections which had the incorrect IBase have moved to production. So the entire landscape is set up with the correct, there's no more of those virtual systems anywhere. All the live systems are in place. So, and since all the corrections which were the incorrect IBase, they moved to production. From then on, they could create normal corrections with the correct IBase. So the developers were trained to make sure that when they created the normal correction, they started using the correct IBase. Here's a project to support landscape cutover. And this is a view. So far, I've been showing you a view of the ECC environment. So we did the same thing with the automatic cutover of SRM environment. And in SRM, DG1 is the development system, and FG1 is the QA system. And there also we emulated users adding the support landscape for testing of cutover with the virtual SRM system. And GDZ is a virtual support landscape development system. GFZ was the virtual QA system, and GPZ was a virtual production system. And down below, we're showing the actual productive environment, of SRM, where GDZ was replaced with GSD, which is the live development system, and the GFZ, which was the virtual, was replaced with GSF. And their productive system, they had two of them. GPZ virtual was replaced with GSP productive SRM system. And it worked perfect, and we could, demonstrate it all and train the developers how to make it happen, how to use the productive environment on the, on the sandbox environment we had set up, and which was made permanently available to, set of users. We did the same thing eventually with the BW environment. And one word of caution is there was a particular note mentioned which describes in detail what are the basic requirements to implement BW ChaRM on the BW systems. So make note of this note, might be more current now, so things might have changed. So this is something we had to fulfill before we were able to implement ChaRM on BW environment. And we, of course, performed a POC for this also, using the development solution manager and a sandbox BW systems. We created customizing as well as workbench transports with info cubes and characteristics to make sure that all kinds of BW transports were able to move from dev to QA to production. So here's a visual picture of what the environment looked like, what are the transaction types we had used. For Saturn, which is a project environment, we used implementation project. Of course, you use the implementation project normally because that's the nature of projects, because one feature of implementation project usage in ChaRM is that they don't allow urgent transports, urgent corrections. You don't make bug fixes in a project landscape, so that's why it's preferred to use implementation projects in a project landscape. So we utilize the normal SDCR there and normal SDMJ. SDCR is a change request implement in ChaRM, and SDMJ is the normal correction in ChaRM. And then from SDMJ, for each normal correction, you can tie multiple transports to them. In the Genesis environment, which is a support landscape, use the maintenance project, for ChaRM, and there, they did not make use of support notification, which is SLFN in project landscape, but they made a good usage of support notification, which is ZLFN, in the support environment. And we had a modified version of change request also. Instead of SDCR, we used the YDCR, and we had a modified version of normal correction also, which was ZDMJ, and urgent correction was also modified from SDHF to YDHF. I mean, the customizing was kept to the barest minimum required to allow the process to proceed with the proper workflow and emulate the environment, exactly what they wanted. So it's always a good idea to minimize customizing, because you have to frequently perform upgrades and to maintain the ChaRM environment. So it's a good idea to, do that. Here's a verbal description of what was done. They use SDCR and SDMJ in the project landscape with implementation projects, the Saturn project, and the service desk was not used for implementation projects, but it was used. They modified SLFN, which is the ZLFN version they created of the support service desk in the support landscape, and YDCR, SDCR was modified to YDCR, which is the change request. ZDMJ is the modified version of normal correction. YDHF is the modified version of urgent correction. Projects were made mandatory, like I showed in the earlier slides, when transports were created, so that developers could not create transports and everybody was using ChaRM properly. Cross-system object lock, which is a must to have, we felt, so that multiple developers cannot make changes to the same object. This ensures that one developer makes changes to an object in one project, and it ties up that particular object, so that any other developer in any other project cannot check it out and make changes to it. They have to coordinate with each other so that they don't walk over each other's changes by the time the changes ended up in production. So this lock entry, had to be deleted manually by the release management, as and when, developers were coordinating properly and making sure that they release their changes in order all the way to production. Authorization for deleting logs resided with the release management team. So I'll describe a little bit later how they manage different roles. So they performed, retrofit was set up in their environment, but by the time I left, they were not using ChaRM retrofit, although it was fully functional. They're using the old way of moving transports manually from support landscape to project landscape on a weekly basis, because that's what they were used to. But normally retrofit can be worked upon where, from within ChaRM, you get the prompt, one of the actions which allows you to do retrofit can be configured. And there's a good bit of documentation on retrofit on SDN as well as in the SPRO of Solution Manager. So you can get, but you can set up the the retrofit functionality also in the production, before production in the mock environment in the development Solution Manager and the Sandbox ECC. So we tested it there. So in the support landscape, SDCR was copied to YDCR, and I mentioned the minimal changes are made, and the only change that was made is in the subject area. You see a lot many options. Instead of that, we made changes with just JCI as the Johnson Control urgent correction maintenance, and JCI normal correction maintenance is shown. This way, there was no confusion for the developer to select the wrong subject and proceed. Then they would, they will lose that change request. They may choose the wrong thing and proceed. In the implementation project, in the earlier screen I showed you YDCR, here I'm showing you the SDCR. So this is what it would normally look like if you're using out-of-the-box change request. Here you see all these options. So we took out all the options except two of them, and we changed those to JCI. So the SDCR was used for the implementation project, and YDCR was used for the maintenance project and support landscape. SLFN was copied to ZLFN. This is for the service desk. And the main reason they did it is because they wanted to add additional fields. And when you ran the SLFN, we added an additional tab called customer field. And customer field, they created a region, country, team type, release, etc. So this was to facilitate reporting of the metrics for change request management. And this required some ABAP programming, but it wasn't very difficult. A regular trained ABAP programmer can facilitate this. I'll show you in a few slides how it helped them further. There's a transaction for actually, especially in solution as 7.0. It's still existing in 7.1. It's called CRM _DNO _monitor. That transaction allows you to do reporting against the various normal corrections, urgent corrections, changes that you made, transport that are part of. So it's a very good reporting transaction. Of course, this was modified as CRM DNO monitor was modified into a program called or transaction called ZCRM _DNO _monitor, which allowed us to add reports against various fields which are shown on the previous screen. Here you see the custom report output metrics on the changes that were added with the ZCRM DNO monitor. So it allowed us to create this spreadsheet. Of course, this is the output of SAP, and there's an icon there at the top middle list of icons. There's an icon there to convert it into graphics format, into a format which is visible here. So the custom report output could be graphical or in the form of spreadsheets, and this worked really good for the management. This kind of functionality they could not create earlier with the previous tools they were using for ChaRM or change management. So some of the learning points that we had, in our situation, the system had to be added on an installment basis, and so you should expect that when you implement ChaRM. So you should be able and willing to adopt workarounds, and of course you should set up the workaround. Whatever you're doing, make sure that you test them out in your development solution manager and development ECC sandbox. Many target systems are possible, not just limited to 17, just like I described, by using the horizontal logical component as well as vertical logical component. And here note that the CSOL requires a production system definitely in the table which contains CSOL, and also in the logical component, productive role must be filled up. So that's a requirement. Automatic cutover within SPMS in parallel development environment is possible with the way I've shown. And this is how you can make the best use of it, because as you release from the project QA systems, the transports, they automatically end up in the development system of the support landscape. Release from the QA of the project landscape automatically makes the transport go into the buffer of the development landscape or support landscape. So, of course, at Johnson Controls, they were limiting. ChaRM allows you many more role types, or they have like a release. They have a requester, change manager, IT operator, tester, etc. They have 7 such roles, but Johnson Controls wanted to limit that activity to 4 different role types, and they call them functional consultant / developer, or an application lead, and IT operator and release manager. So they wanted to limit it to 4 different role types. So they decided to build the ChaRM roles from scratch. So they made extensive use of transaction SU53 and ST01 traces to build roles from scratch. And the way we set up implementation of ChaRM is we set up like a mini war room with myself and the release manager in one room. And as and when we needed help from basis, we were able to get it on almost a real-time basis through phones and emails. and just doing a quick WebEx with them to show them exactly what we needed. And the basis team was partially in Germany and partially even in India and in Milwaukee, and we were in Holland, Michigan, so in 4 different locations. And same thing with security. Security, if something didn't work, we immediately did a WebEx on the security team in Milwaukee, and we were able to, do the traces or run SU53 screenshots and show it to them. So it worked perfect like that. So you need not, tie up resources unnecessarily, and these resources were made available to us as and when needed, which was on a fractional basis. They could continue to do their normal assignments, and just the 2 of us, myself and the release manager, were the only 2 permanent resources for this project for about 5 months. Some of the best practices that I suggest you use is minimize ChaRM customizing as much as possible. Use work centers. Of course, in 7.1 they're mandatory, but that time they were not. So we were not able to use it because the work centers are known to cause performance issues for some reason, and that needed some more extensive training. So we decided to use transactions, generally solution manager transactions, and then TDMS ADM is like a user used in the STMS environment, and some notes had to be applied to make sure that worked properly in ChaRM. That otherwise causes issues. And of course, we use trusted RFCs in ChaRM. On the trusted RFC allows you to log into a remote system without the use of passwords. So we use that. So instead of then normally, it does not have a user ID embedded in the RFC, but we made use of the user ID TRFC user on client 000 and satellite. So the transports movement did not require login or passwords of individual users. So and we had to make sure that TRFC user, which we embedded TRFC user, had the proper roles and parameters, because there's some notes which describe how to set up TMS ADM environment also in ChaRM. So we divided up work so that basis team was responsible for setting up authorizations in Solution Manager on client 000, and they did not bother for the non-zero clients. Security team worked with us for setting up user authorization in non-zero clients. So the division of responsibility worked very well. So what are the key learning? Ideally, all systems should be made available for connection at the same time, and you might be looking for that, but reality is something different. You have to be flexible and resort to workarounds. And perform the POCs in development, Solution Manager, and using a sandbox environment, and test it in that environment, and make screenshots, make training documentation, and create user IDs for a set of say generic users you can use, or live users, whoever will be using ChaRM. Allow them access with proper authorization, the same authorization that they'll have in the production environment later on. That way you test the roles. You also train them properly to get familiar with hands-on experience and usage of ChaRM. Unless you train them well in advance, unless they have good solid experience of using ChaRM, letting them loose in productive environment can be risky, and ChaRM project can possibly fail also. If they don't like it, they reject it. And if the developers are scattered all over the globe, for a company, it can be a big risk to the project, if you don't train people properly in the test environment. You use this automatic cutover the way we described, it'll go a long way in helping reduce the pain in doing the cutover. For external transports, because this customer got external transport from SAP or from third-party vendors, we had to go in and create the normal correction, then had to move the objects because it had the incorrect transport layer. We had to make changes to it to add it to the normal correction and urgent correction for movement through ChaRM. But definitely don't use ChaRM for most of the transports, and resort to other means of moving transports, which are, use ChaRM for everything is what I'm trying to say. Return on investment that the customer finally agreed that they got was they got a central repository for their entire blueprint, business process inventory, and test documentation, and they got a solid ChaRM change request management process with ChaRM for a major SAP deployment which was going on. And it was a multi-million-dollar Saturn project they had going on, and they could not risk movement of transports in an incorrect way. So this helped them go a long way in making sure that the project was on time, on target, and also the support landscape was handled much better. And they made use of this cross-project system object locking also, made uses of automated retrofit, approval procedure, workflow integration. And this is ChaRM project is guaranteed to be ITL and SOX compliant, and so they have better alignment with that, because all their developers and their testers and their managers are ITL certified, and they have a strict requirement of that in Johnson Controls. They have faster retrieval of detailed reporting of transports, tasks and objects, which they feel saved them at least 20% in labor effort. And they, of course, they use a dual landscape with built-in cutover. That has eliminated manual efforts at the time of cutover, which was required fairly frequently. And this has reduced the risk of missing transports and incorrect import sequences. And no deletion of transports required. All the transports that start with development, they end up through QA all the way to production. This is all that I have. I have a few additional slides added in the end, which will show you the workflow of development environment, of the project implementation project, as well as the support project, and also some extra tips that you can make use of. But I'm ready for any questions that you might have.
Yeah. Hey, and thanks, Subhash. And Subhash, you mentioned there are some slides here at the very end.
Yeah.
This slide deck will go in a PDF form to all the participants on this call. So you'll see all the slides that Subhash showed today, as well as the ones in the appendix that he just mentioned.
Okay.
So we'd like to open it up for questions. We do have one that's in the Q&A box as well.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe while people are queuing up there on the phone, if they have questions there, we'll go ahead and get started, Subhash, with this one. You see, from Kartik, we often received inquiries from clients regarding ChaRM for having multiple dev and QA clients. So wanted to know about that and also about retrofit.
Kartik, we often receive inquiries from clients regarding ChaRM for having multiple dev and QA clients. So wanted to know that also, wanted to know a little bit about retrofit. So in my presentation, I've tried to describe that as best as possible. And if you have further questions, you can write to me. I've even got my email, but that question has pretty much been answered because of the way I've described, because we're making use of many, many clients of development and QA as well as. And of course, retrofit has been implemented, and then retrofit guide is available in SDN, and also the configuration guide is available in the SPRO. Somebody mentioned what should be your strategy in scenario where there are more than one development and quality clients. You just have to add those additional clients as the targets in the logical component as well as in STMS, and those can be used as targets. So you should have one development system, and a bunch of targets will act as the QA systems, and then one productive systems.
Yeah. Hi, Subhash. This is Sunny here.
Yeah.
Yeah. This was my question. So, in case we have different quality clients, more than one quality client, and when we are transporting the requests, to quality, so what would be our strategy in that case? How we will do that?
What I would suggest is you do the transport to the main quality. It will automatically go there, and it will end up in the buffer of the other quality clients. Okay. So move them to those quality clients only through the task list, by execution through the task list.
Okay.
Yeah. And by running batch, you can set up batch jobs to run automatically through the task list, or you can manually run as and when needed. That's the strategy we use.
Okay.
Yeah?
Thanks.
Sure. Welcome. Any other questions?
There's a few more in the Q&A, Subhash.
Oh, there you go.
Dan McGrant from Realtek asked, how long did the project take?
How long did the project take from beginning of to POC to go live? The first part of the project, which was about 3 months, was the configuration of Solution Manager, setting up the repositories and moving the documentation and the setup of, basic configuration, system configuration of both the Solution Managers. All of that took 3 months. Now, after that, I left that location and came back 3-4 months later to do ChaRM, and that took entirely 5 months. Right from the time we got the only thing they had done till that time was creation of 200 normal corrections in the project landscape. From then on, it took about 5 months. And part of the time was lost in waiting for the systems to be made available as and when needed. So theoretically, it took about 4.5 months. Complete documentation, complete training, release of the ChaRM project to the developers and testers worldwide. So everything was completed in about 4.5 months, you can say. But you got to set up an environment where you and the release manager are tied to the project, and don't tie a whole bunch of other resources, because customers will not like that, first thing. And second thing is, it's not very productive, and too many people are interfering or trying to find out what do I have to do, or how do you do this, etc. And keep the training separated from the project, from the production systems, and don't allow untrained people get in the productive environment unless you certify them, and unless you sort of are reassured by their team lead that this person can run through a normal correction all the way from dev to production, including cutover. So we made team leads in charge of conducting the training with the full documentation. First, the team leads were trained. Then with their help, we trained the rest of the developers. So we conducted a series of classes, remotely or within a classroom for the local people, 10 people at a time. We ran them through the entire process. We created 2 documents. One is the user guide, one is the configuration guide. Gave the configuration guide to release manager, to the security team, basis team, to explain to them how things were done so that they could maintain the ChaRM environment, and gave the user guide to the team leads to distribute to all the user community so they could run through ChaRM. And we wanted to tell the customers that make sure that your POC on the development solution manager is kept running all the time, because you might have new developers, testers coming in to make use of ChaRM, so that we initially trained. Don't create any unnecessary projects in the production ChaRM environment. No unnecessary projects in production solution manager, because I've noticed that several customers, you see like 100 different projects created in the production solution manager, and there are only about 10 projects are really productive. Rest of the project is junk sitting there. Somebody created and somebody used it at some point and left it or abandoned it. There are ways you can clean up the production solution manager. So resort to those ways, you can delete or close projects where they're not even visible. And you can even delete unnecessary logical components. So try your level best to keep the production environment clean. So here's how long did you project? Okay.
And there's one last question there.
Cutover. Did you transport a single transport through both landscape, or did you create a second transport in the dev maintenance landscape? No, the transport that came in the project landscape, in the QA of the project landscape, of course, the project landscape has just development system with a bunch of clients and QA system with a bunch of clients. So whatever ended up in the QA system, once that is released, will end up in the buffer of the development system in the support landscape. So automatic cutover has taken place. So you run the job and you release those transports in the development system or support landscape only when you are ready to push it all the way to production, which did not happen very often. So we had to plan it out. So that's how the automatic cutover worked.
Very good, Subhash. We're out of time.
Okay.
So we're going to have to close the call, but I appreciate everybody's participation today, and thank you again, Subhash, for being the presenter today. The content was just fantastic. I appreciate all the good information. And for all of you on the line, everyone will get a copy of the slides as mentioned, and they'll come out within the next 2 days. So everybody have a great rest of the day, and thanks again for joining us. Thanks
everybody. I really appreciate your participation, and hope you all learned something from it. Thank you. Thank you.